Here's something that might surprise you. Studies show that over 30% of all internet bandwidth is used for pornography consumption, but its psychological impact varies dramatically based on the type of content. Today, we are exploring the neuroscience behind this rarely discussed topic.
That's such a striking statistic, and it really highlights why we need to have this evidence-based conversation about how different types of content affect our brains.
Let me start with what the research shows about mainstream pornography's impact on neural pathways. When someone regularly consumes fast-paced, highly stimulating content, they are essentially rewiring their dopamine system to require increasingly extreme stimuli.
You know what's fascinating about that? The brain changes are remarkably similar to what we see in other behavioural addictions. Could you break down exactly what's happening physiologically?
Well, each viewing session triggers dopamine spikes that far exceed natural levels. We're talking about responses up to 200% higher than what occurs during normal intimate encounters. The brain literally can't process these intensity levels properly.
That reminds me of research on processed foods, how they're specifically engineered to overwhelm our natural reward systems.
Exactly right. And just like the food industry, the mainstream adult content industry uses sophisticated data analytics to maximize what they call time on site. They track user behavior patterns, optimize for engagement, and essentially engineer content for addiction.
The consequences of this engineering are pretty severe, aren't they? What are researchers seeing in terms of real-world impacts?
The statistics are actually staggering. Studies show a 1000% increase in erectile dysfunction rates among men under 40 over the past decade. We are also seeing unprecedented levels of relationship anxiety and intimacy disorders.
But this is where the research gets really interesting, isn't it? Because not all content affects the brain the same way.
That's right, and this is crucial. Studies have identified 3 distinct categories of content with varying neurological impacts. Let's start with audio-only erotic content, which engages completely different neural pathways.
Could you explain why audio content seems to have such different effects on the brain?
It's fascinating. When engaging with audio content, you're using imagination, emotional processing, and narrative understanding. These higher-order cognitive functions actually protect against the kind of desensitization we see with visual content.
That makes so much sense when you consider how reading engages different neural pathways than watching videos.
And then there's what researchers call ethical content, characterized by longer scenes, realistic scenarios, and emotional connection. Studies show it produces about 40% less dopamine disruption compared to mainstream content.
The research on scene changes and cuts is particularly interesting. What have they found about how that affects arousal patterns?
Studies indicate that rapid scene changes, often every 3 to 4 seconds in mainstream content, create a state of constant arousal without satisfaction. It's like trying to eat while someone keeps switching your plate every few bites.
That continuous disruption must have some serious long-term effects on natural arousal patterns.
The data shows it does. Regular consumers report up to a 50% decrease in natural arousal response after just 6 months of heavy consumption. But here's where it gets hopeful. These changes are often reversible.
What does the research say about recovery patterns?
Studies show that after 90 days of avoiding hyperstimulating content, most people report significant improvements in natural arousal and emotional connection. The brain has remarkable plasticity.
That's encouraging, but what about prevention? How can people make more informed choices about their consumption?
Research suggests 3 key factors: content pacing, slower is better; emotional context, connection over performance; and consumption patterns, mindful engagement versus compulsive use.
And this all connects to broader digital wellness issues, doesn't it?
Exactly. We're dealing with the same underlying challenges of maintaining psychological health in an environment engineered to hijack our attention and reward systems.
So, what's the key takeaway for people trying to navigate this landscape?
Understanding these mechanisms gives us power over them. It's not about shame or complete abstinence. It's about making informed choices based on how different types of content affect our brains and relationships.
And recognizing that while some forms might be less damaging than others, nothing really substitutes for genuine human connection.
That's exactly right. The goal isn't to demonize sexuality or pleasure. It's to understand how to engage with content in ways that support rather than undermine our capacity for real intimacy and connection.